Hello, and welcome to this episode of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Davis Henry. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, sex therapist, intimacy coordinator, entrepreneur, content creator, and all the things. So today we don't have a guest. I am the guest this week. With summertime, people's schedules are kind of all over the place. We're all doing so many different things. And so we had a free week this week. And rather than not having an episode, I thought that this would be the perfect week to go ahead and answer some of your questions. A while back, I asked you guys to send in questions if you had any for me as a mental health professional, as an expert, as a relationship person, as a sex therapist, as an intimacy coordinator, as an avid gardener, any of those things. And you guys sent in some great questions, some of which, I'll be honest, we've gotten some questions. And rather than holding those questions and asking them, we've actually just found guests to answer those, or they applied to an upcoming episode that we knew we were going to have with a guest. So we just asked those questions, folded those questions in. But we do have a list of questions, and honestly, the list is long. So I'm only going to answer probably about 10. You're going to see me looking at my screen. I'm toggling between the feed here and my screen. Right now, I've got like 32 questions, and I'm not doing 32 questions. I'll probably, depending on the time, I'll probably do about 10. So just wanted to let you know kind of the lay of the land for today. These are not coming in any particular order. And I didn't prepare any of the answers. I do have the list in front of me because I needed to actually be able to read from the list. But I haven't really thought about my answers for them because I did want the answers to be as natural and as organic as possible. Now, before we get started, though, I believe that this is the first episode. If you guys are watching the podcast, as I always encourage you to do, to watch it on Spotify, this is probably the first episode where you're seeing me wear glasses. I tend to try not to wear glasses, and I don't think I've worn them. I might have worn them just to read or something. I tend to not wear glasses only because of the light. You know how we do the ring lights, and this is a light right here. I think you can see that my hand is over it right here. Um, we have to do the lighting so that things look proper as we're recording things. And I typically hate seeing either the ring or this light that I'm using here today in the reflection of my glasses. So I usually don't wear them, but mama's eyes are tired. And so I decided to pop on these blue light glasses just to give me a little bit of help today. And I think they are the cutest. I love them. These are from Peepers. They are the Shine On. Very, very cute. Shine On. If you go to peepers.com, you can get you a pair. They're actually, the reason why I'm telling you this is because they are on sale right now for $22. So if you go over to Peepers and just put in the search Shine On, you'll go and you'll look, and they have these with no prescription blue light glasses that will help with eye strain and stress. They protect your eyes if you're in front of a screen all day, scrolling and such. If you're doing a video podcast, these are super duper helpful. And they actually do. I've noticed that, like, sometimes when my eyes, if I've been on a screen all day, more than I should be, putting these on definitely do help with that. So that's just a little tip, a little trick. This is not a sponsored ad. The Peepers does not. Now you can holler at your girl, Peepers. Holler at your girl, because these aren't my only glasses. But I do think that they make some of the chicest, cutest, clunky, just sturdy frames, and I love them. So there you go. So now that that is out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with some of these questions. And these are not in any specific order. I'm just reading the ones that we've highlighted on here that I know I want to get to. And then if we have time, we'll get to some of the other ones. But here we go. So the first question is, What are some common misconceptions about intimacy, intimacy on screen, and how do you address them as an intimacy coordinator? So, let me first talk about what it is to be an intimacy coordinator. I've started doing this work. I've been doing it for a couple years now, and um, intimacy coordinators we were actually a thing. We've been a thing for a while, right? There have been individuals that have been placed on set in order to make sure that actors feel safe, that scenes look correct, that and some of you may not know, and this is one of the misconceptions, I think. Some of you may not know that aside from what we would classify as porn, um, individuals are not really having sex. They're really not having actual penetrative sex on set. So even in, your typical movies or television shows where you see two people under the bed and it looks like they're naked, 9 times out of 10, they may not actually be naked unless we're showing a nude scene, and sometimes that, it may or may not be their body. Some actors use body doubles for that. Some actors use prosthetics, so that's another, misconception. So, sometimes what you see may or may not be the actor at all, um, and sometimes the nudity is implied. You're not really seeing, if you see soap operas is a good example. A lot of times, you rarely do you see a woman in a soap opera without a bra on if they're in bed, but if they are, they usually have a sheet up to here, and underneath that sheet, usually there's some sort of bra, nude bra or bandeau or strapless number on underneath. Um, so people generally, unless they are nude, usually have some sort of barrier covering on, and that's pretty standard and typical in the industry. Sex is usually not actually happening, unless, like I said, if it's porn, or erotic film or something like that, it could be. But generally, are um, those are things that are carved out and or agreed upon prior to you ever setting on set getting on set. The need for intimacy coordination really did arise several years back. I think most of you guys will remember when the Me Too movement started and Time's Up and all of that, where there was a lot of, we were hearing a lot more artist voices about inappropriate behavior happening behind the scenes, people being asked to be nude when that wasn't what they signed up for, or being coerced into doing things that they did not agree to when they took the job, feeling as though their jobs would be in jeopardy if they didn't comply or didn't follow through what was being requested of them. Perhaps they signed on to a film or show and they thought that, oh, I'll be able to have my bra on. But in the midst of take one, take two, take three, let's try this now with your bra off. Things like that were happening, and they really shouldn't have. Our actors need to feel safe, need to feel protected, need to feel as though they have the autonomy that they absolutely do over their bodies, and they need to be able to change their minds, quite frankly. Just because consent is something that, um, it's cool. Consent is cool, and it's something that we have to be able to evaluate as things go forward at any given time. Um, so yeah, I think I'm answering that question. Definitely in terms of misconceptions, a lot of people think that a lot more is actually going on. But you got to remember, these are actors. They're acting, and it is their job to make you believe that what you're seeing is happening, and it's my job to make sure that it is believable that those things are happening. So it's an interesting job, and interesting to be able to choreograph and coach people through making it all look real on camera. All right, so next question. This is an advice question. Is it normal to have low sex desire? I'm a woman in my late 30s and didn't used to have any issues. Now it seems like I'm never really in the mood and it's pretty annoying to my partner. I'm wondering if it's normal, if it's just a phase, and if my desire will ever return. At this point, I don't really care if it does or not. Help, I guess. All right. Sexual desire. Sexual desire is our motivation to be sexual. So think about it that way. Sexual desire is our motivation to be sexual. It is not uncommon whether you identify as a male or female or non-binary. It is not uncommon for your desire to fluctuate throughout your lifetime. Our desire at 18 may not be the same as it is at 32, may not be the same as it is at 49, may not be the same as it is at 72. It is not uncommon if you are in a relationship for at some point within that relationship for you to be the high desire partner, meaning that your desire is higher than your partner's. And as the relationship progresses, that your level of sexual desire could change as well. Um, if you think about it, that makes sense because our lives change. Different aspects of our personalities, our jobs, our finances, spirituality, trauma, all those things kind of factor into our motivation, energy level, health, all of that. It all factors into our motivation to be more sexual. So it is not, you're asking, is it normal to have low sex desire? At some point in your life, my dissertation was on low sex desire in postpartum women. It was a comparative study between stay-at-home and working moms. Can't believe I still remember that. But yeah, that was my dissertation topic. So I do know a lot about low sex desire, just so you know. One of the things that always stood out to me, and I use this statistic, and I actually think at this point is probably low, but it is that 80% of women will have low sex desire at some point. Or I'm sorry, 80% of women experience low sex desire. What I believe to be true is that at some point in our lifetime, all women who are all those who identify as women who are having sex or in sexual relationships will experience low sex desire at some point. The reason their desire is low is the thing that changes. So it could be at one point in your life that you aren't comfortable with sex. Maybe it's because of maybe you had a partner that cheated on you repeatedly and it made you not want to be vulnerable in that way. And so when you're in this new relationship, you don't really feel like being sexual. Your desire, your motivation for sex is low. It could be that, you know what, right now I've got 5 kids running around all under the age of 10. It's driving me crazy. I'm super tired. I'm just trying to plan dinner and get, food on the table, homework done, all of those things. So I don't have the energy for sex. That could be a reason. It could be that you're a woman of a certain age and now you're dealing with vaginal dryness and you're dealing with hot flashes and you're dealing with a whole bunch of other things. And right now, the last thing you can think about is somebody on top of you because you're super hot, like physically sweating and not feeling, very sexual. So there are so many reasons why your desire could be lower than your partner's. The other thing I want you to think about is sometimes, especially when you have a partner who has a higher sexual desire, um, because yours is lower, it makes you feel as though your desire is low, when in actuality, it's normal, but just lower than the person that you're partnered with. Okay. And hopefully this will make sense. If you're just listening to this podcast, just come back and watch what I'm getting ready to do on the video. Okay. On Spotify. So let's say, and I've got this microphone in front of me. It's cramping my style. All right. So let's say this is you. Let's say this is your partner. And where we are right now is in the middle. And this is normal, right? Where we are is normal, right? If let's say your partner's desire is high he has a high sex drive, right? Um, he or she will feel as though your desire here is low. And that's not true because remember, we said this is normal, right? So if they're up here and you're right here, your desire is not low, it's just lower than theirs, right? If here is normal and you're here, it may be low. It may actually be low. The goal for both individuals in the relationship is not if here is normal and this is high, is not for it's just as unreasonable for me to think that you, as the normal desire partner, is going to make it all the way up here, right? That's kind of absurd. It's also absurd to think that this person with a high sex drive is going to be able to come all the way down here. What we want to do is get you guys somewhere in the middle, right? Knowing that there's going to be some fluctuation. There are going to be days where I'm going to, or weeks or whatever, that I'm going to want it more. There are going to be days where we're going to have to do it a lot less than what you wanted. So we start to build in patterns for compromise and ways to meet each other somewhere in the middle. So to answer the question, is it a phase? I would imagine, unless this has been going on for, weeks, months, years, this is probably something that will ebb and flow throughout your relationship, where there will be times where your desire is going to get higher and times where it might be lower. If it's something that you feel like you've been suffering from for an extensive amount of time, I think it would be a great idea to go see your primary care or your OBGYN and get some blood draws, get your levels checked, to see kind of where you are, and see if there's some hormone replacement or some other things going on that could be causing your desire to be lower than you would like. Sexual desire is one of those things that there can be biological, psychological, and social reasons for that. Your doctor is going to rule out some of the physiological or biological causes, making sure that like you're not on a medication that's causing your desire to be low, or there isn't some underlying illness or something else causing your desire to be low, or that there aren't hormone changes that are going on that's causing the desire to be low. They can work those things out. You can also start talking to a therapist who specializes in sexuality issues, because they can help to explore more of the psychological and social aspects of that after you've seen your doctor and gotten those levels worked out. Okay, I hope that helps. Next question. Ooh. All right. It's another sex question. I've been married for 8 years and I feel like our sexual routine has become stagnant. What advice would you give to spice up our sex life? Sex is pretty good, but I don't want to lose our connection and lust for each other. I want to try new things, but my partner is fine with the way that things are. This is kind of, in a way, it could be piggybacking on what we just talked about with sexual desire. Um, People like different things. You're not gonna it's rare to come into a relationship with someone and you both have the same likes, the same dislikes, the same level of adventure and curiosity and for exploration. It's just, I mean, you come from different, we all have a different sexual past, different sexual past experiences. And so we come into relationship having an appetite for different things. And there are times when you do try new things with your partner and it's not something that you would have tried, where you're like, oh, I like that. And then other times, like, don't you ever do that again in your life. So it is not uncommon to have different desires for different things sexually, and being turned on to different things and turned off by different things. That is not uncommon at all. In terms of spicing things up, I think one of the things that I love to do with couples in therapy is have them create an always, sometimes, and never list, where I have them sit down and make a list for themselves of, these are the things that I will always do, no matter what. Every time we have sex or whenever you want it, just say the word, or you don't even have to say it. These are the things that we're going to do. The sometimes are, you know what? I don't mind a little cunnilingus. I don't mind a little fellatio. I don't mind a little rear entry position. Um, but I don't want to do that all the time. Those are your sometimes. And then the never is don't ever, and the rock means never. Don't ever do this, or I'm going to scream, I'm leaving, or whatever. So create your own list with you and your partner of the always for you. You individually do this. Create an always, sometimes a never list, and then share them with your partner so that we're always on the same page about the things that are always happening. We're good with those things. The sometimes you might get it on your birthday. Okay. Or if you've been really good, or if you buy my mama shoes that she wants. I'm just kidding, but perhaps whatever works in your house. And then the nevers are those things that are just non negotiable and are probably going to be off the table unless someone changes their mind. So that is a good place to start, I think. So I'm going to leave that right there. Hopefully, I answered your question. All right. The next one is a gardening question, which is so interesting to me because I haven't really talked about gardening on this podcast, not because I don't want to, but because I haven't found um, someone to come on and talk to me about it. So if you know someone who is a garden expert or that you would love to have me talk with, I am open to suggestions. If you want to suggest yourself, please do. I love gardening. That's one of my passions. And I think this question must come from somebody who follows me on Instagram at Dr. Tiffany TV, because that is where I usually post about my garden. So this question is, what are some beginner-friendly plants that individuals with limited gardening experience can start with? Okay. Um, this is just my experience. I garden in a zone 8, but as I'm thinking about it, this could be for indoor plants or outdoor plants. So I'll start with some indoor things so it doesn't really necessarily matter. I would say for indoors, I think pothos is, I think that's how you say it, Pothos. Those plants are so easy to grow. I have such a great story to tell you about a failure. I'm going to come back to it. Those plants are so easy to grow. They're easy to propagate, meaning you can just snip them off, stick it in water, and roots will start to develop, and you can put it in another uh, pot of soil, and they just continue to grow. They're really easy to grow, and for the most part, they don't need anything but water. One thing that I do every summer for, I'd say 90% of my houseplants, they are all outside during the summer. And this has been going on for probably the past 5 or 6 years. I will take them all out. I have a covered front porch, and I put all of my houseplants outside because most houseplants, when you think about it, they're kind of tropical. And even though it's hot here in Georgia, it's also very humid. So and since that porch is covered, it does get some sun, but it's not beaten down by the sun all day. So it's a very tropical, kind of humid environment. And my plants love it. So even if over the fall and winter they struggle because maybe I forget to water or maybe I don't give it as much attention, that summertime that I put them out there, they love it. So pothos is a great indoor. Also, the ZZ plant. If you look up ZZ plants, those are really easy. I find that I don't, all I do with my ZZs, I have 2 of them. The only thing I do with them is I water them once a month. The pothos I water once a week. The ZZ, I just do, I have that in the snake plant. The snake plant is supposed to be easy, but I've killed probably like 3. I have one that might be on its way out. Those are supposed to be easy, low light. They don't need much attention. They don't get water very often either, but for some reason I can't keep them alive. ZZs though, on the first of every month, that's when I do it. My monthly waterings. And that's the only way I can remember whether I've watered is I just do it on the first of the month. I'll water those and that's it. They're not super picky about light. They can be in a low light area. They can have a little bit more. They can be in a window. They cannot. They don't care. They don't care. So those are the 2 for indoor. For outdoor, okay. So if you're into flowers, the best hands down plant that you can get, I think, my opinion, okay? And again, I live in a zone 8, so it's in Georgia. It's a little bit further south. Um, Best plant outdoors. If you want flowers, if you want color, hear me out, because when I say petunia, people are thinking of some old school plant that is not necessarily what they really want. But Proven Winners is a brand. They make a supertunia. It's called a supertunia Vista bubblegum petunia. Proven Winners Supertunia Vista bubblegum. It is a pink petunia. Here, where I live, it is not supposed to be a perennial. It's an annual. And I know some people don't like to do annuals because they don't like to have something they have to plant over and over and over again each year. This particular plant has come back for me for like 3 years. I've bought an annual and it came back. Even on the tag, it says like zone 9 or 10, but for whatever reason, it comes back. It grows prolifically, it spreads out. It's just a great plant, and it's something that will convince you that you know what you're doing, even when you don't. As long as you water it and feed it a little bit, you're good to go. In terms of vegetables, the thing that I have had a lot of success with has been cucumbers. And I never would have thought that. I grow right now, I'm growing one, two, three, four, no, three different types of cucumbers. And I like to pickle them. But for the past couple years, I've changed which varieties I grow. But I like to grow pickling cucumbers because I like pickles. So cucumbers, for whatever reason, have been really easy for me. I find tomatoes to be fairly easy as well, but cucumbers, for whatever reason, I got it. My advice to anybody who gardens is just find something that you really love to eat and then learn how to grow that. Because then it becomes fun, it becomes a challenge. I'd grow tons of things, but I I really love cucumbers, and I'd be sad if I couldn't grow them. Another gardening question: what are some common challenges faced? Oh God, by beginning gardeners, and what advice do you have to overcome them? Well, I laugh because my biggest challenge right now is deer and rabbits. Not so much rabbits at this point. So I would say the biggest challenge for me is pests. And my biggest pests are going to be deer, rabbit, and weirdly enough, armadillos. Again, if you follow me on Instagram at Dr. Tiffany TV, you'll see these things pop up on my stories, sometimes in my feed. It is animal kingdom outside my house. And we have some times of the year, more than not, like a lot of pressure from these animals, and they really do like to either eat the food that we have, or they destroy like plants and flowers, which is equally annoying, especially when we put in so much time. So if anybody has any advice for me on that, on how to get rid of the deer. So what I do right now to overcome it, there's a spray that I use. It's called Liquid Fence. I spray that around as much as I can. There's also Repels All. It's this like shaking granules that you put out. Sometimes I might shave some Irish Spring soap and leave that around the garden because the smell apparently they don't like. I also plant a lot of things that I already know they don't like alliums. Proven Winners makes a serendipity allium. They don't touch it. They don't touch my lavender. They don't touch the salvia. They don't touch the lantana. And so sometimes I'll plant those things around areas where I have things that they actually do like. So maybe in my mind, it'll deter them from coming close to the things that they like because I've planted on the outer border the things that they don't. So that's how I get by with that. But I mean, they're still out here in these streets. They were here hard over the weekend, and I lost my mind all weekend. So yeah. So there we go. That's that on that. Let's see. What is the next question? Oh, I'm putting two questions here together. What are some common misconceptions about CBD and its potential health benefits? How can individuals navigate through the information overload and make informed choices? And then, can you explain the difference between the different types of CBD consumption, oils, edibles, topicals, etc.? So, for those of you who don't know, I do have a CBD company. It's called Shop Kinky Green. You can find it at Shop Kinky Green on Instagram and at shopkinkygreen.com. Um, we offer CBD, full spectrum and broad spectrum CBD products that alleviate pain and accentuate pleasure. Our hero product, our one product that we love and that we find the most success with, is our pain balm called Muscle Melt. It is a topical. Topical products are great because if you are someone, many people don't. So let me go back, I guess. CBD is not the same thing as THC or marijuana. CBD is a different cannabinoid. THC is a cannabinoid that we find with marijuana. It is what, when you start to think about that psychological high that you get with marijuana, for some people, that's exactly why they take it. For others, that's exactly why they wouldn't take it. CBD is not going to give you the psychological high that you would experience with marijuana. It tends to have more calming, relaxing, soothing qualities. And because our bodies have an endocannabinoid system, and so many receptors throughout the body, there's so many ways for it to for you to take advantage of the medicinal properties of the plant. One way to do that is through topicals, meaning you put it on your skin, you put it directly on your skin. The beautiful thing about putting it directly on your skin is, well, let me go back. Let me go back again. There, there are different types of CBD. So full spectrum means that there is legally less than 3%, less than 0.3% THC in the CBD. So a full spectrum product is mostly CBD, but it does have at least, it's going to have less than 0.3% THC. That means that if you ingest it, it's going to show up as positive for THC on the drug test. So if you're someone who can't have THC on your drug test because your job is testing you, a full spectrum CBD product is probably not the best thing for you to take. Okay. You would want to look for something that is like a broad spectrum CBD. And broad spectrum means it is 100% CBD, no THC at all. Full spectrum full spectrum CBD is federally legal, though. So it can be shipped throughout the United States. It is legal in all 50 states. So you can sell it legally, as well as broad spectrum, because it has, is, 100% CBD. Um, okay, so topical products. The great thing about topicals and pain balms and things like that you would put on your skin, they're because they're topical, they're not getting into your bloodstream. So you can take or use a full spectrum CBD product on your skin as a topical because it's not going into your bloodstream. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't confuse you by explaining that. There are also things like tinctures. Tinctures are things that you put under your tongue or on your tongue and swallow, or put into drops into coffee. I use a bear tincture every morning with my coffee. I put like 6 drops of that in my coffee, and it just aids with relaxation, with focus, with clarity, with calming nerves. Some people feel really elevated with it as well. You may see CBD gummies, but anything that you ingest, you'll want to know whether it is full spectrum or broad spectrum, and whether you can be affected by that 0.3% of THC that's in there. And it is a beautiful thing. Um, I find that products that have that little itty bit of THC, um, you start to feel it does help to balance a little bit better. One of the greatest health benefits, and that was part of this question, with CBD, is sleep. I think that's probably, aside from the pain relief, I think that That's one of the things that really does help when people are taking the CBD gummies. We sell what we call yummies because they are yummy. And then I make some like for family or whatever, and those are full spectrum. The ones that I make, not the ones that I sell. But yeah, that helps tremendously with sleep. So if you're someone who has difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, having a restful sleep, CBD may be a really good option for you. And we can certainly do more on that if you like, answer more questions on that. If you do have more questions on that, though, I would encourage you to go back and listen to an earlier episode of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. The guest was Q Nicole Vanderhorst. And she talks about CBD. We talk about CBD and her journey and also more of the benefits. Um, Next question. We're getting down there. We only have 3 more to go. How did you start your garden and what are your favorite things to grow? Well, I think I kind of answered that. Cucumbers is probably my favorite thing to grow. This year, I am growing a lot of flowers. My favorite things to put out, though, for the past couple years, um, they've been like, I really targeted butterflies and hummingbirds, not so much birds, but hummingbirds. And not so much bees. The bees are going to be there. If you have flowers, bees are going to come. But I really wanted to target butterflies and hummingbirds. So I have a lot of Cuphea plants, Cuphea, and they have those like tubular flower petals or whatever, which the hummingbirds know. They mimic a hummingbird feeder, is what it reminds me of. But their beaks can go right into it. I have a lot of those. I have a lot of salvia, have a lot of lantana. If you want butterflies, though, oh my gosh. Well, if you want hummingbirds, the Kufi is number one plant, right? For me. But butterflies, and I don't grow this one anymore because it just got too big, but the Mexican sunflower, I think it's called Tithonia. I think that's the name of it. But if you type in Mexican sunflower, you get it. That thing got so big and out of control, but the butterflies loved it. And I cut it down several times and it kept growing back. It was taller than me, is how tall it was. So I love growing flowers. I love being able to pick flowers and bring them into the house. So I've done that a couple times this year already. Um, but yeah, I started really gardening for real during the pandemic because I was at home and I had to figure out a way to stay sane, even though I was locked in the house with a kindergartner. So yeah, that's how gardening started, and my backyard needed to be transformed, and I just worked at it. I developed a plan in my mind, and if I had to be here, I was going to make it work. I was going to have an outdoor oasis, and that's what I created. And I started growing food as a result of it. And it was just fun. And I really found something that I really do truly love. And I'm happy to have it as a hobby and a way of life. All right. How did I become an intimacy coordinator? And what's been my favorite project to work on? Fun question. So I became an intimacy coordinator. I had a development deal with a network. I was in the process of creating a show for television. And when that happens, when you have development deals like that, a lot of times you're put on hold. Like you can't really work on other things because you're trying to work on this one thing. And so while we were kind of waiting on whether or not the show was going to get officially greenlit or whatever, I had a little extra time on my hands. And so I decided that, I really wanted to work on something. And in case this didn't work out, in case the show didn't get picked up, which it did not, I wanted to do something in the meantime. And so I had been interested in intimacy coordination and just the stars just started to align. There was a new cohort for some classes that needed to take in order to do it, and the timing was right. And so that's kind of how I fell into it. I was supposed to be working on something else, and but I couldn't work on anything. I couldn't really work on anything, and this was the perfect marriage for all of my skills. As most of I've done a lot of work in front of the camera. But the frustrating thing about that is you don't necessarily always have control of what you're able to do. And so I wanted to learn more behind the scenes work, and also have a little bit more flexibility and manageability of what was coming in and the projects I was taking on and all of that kind of thing. I still do love doing the talent side of it, but I also enjoy this work as well. So I'm really happy to have this under my belt. And I think the fact that I am a therapist and a sex therapist and have done on camera work helps tremendously in my ability to excel in this area, because I can put all those skills to use. What's been my favorite project to work on? That is really hard. I will say I'll give you a couple of answers. The weirdest project that I've worked on to date has been something that just came out a few weeks ago. It's called I'm a Virgo. It's on Amazon Prime. Please watch it. It is about a 13-foot young man who is played by Oscar winner Jarrell Jerome. And it's a coming of age story, but it's wild. It's wild. Someone said, who didn't know that I worked on the show, said the other day on Facebook, like, I feel like I need to watch this while I'm high. Totally, because I felt like I needed to be high to work. Like, it was so crazy and wild. And we did sex scenes with puppets, like a 13-foot puppet and dolls. And it was, I mean, you have to get consent for everything. So it was really, really wild. A lot of fun. We shot it in New Orleans. That was probably the craziest thing that I've ever worked on. Probably the most proudest work is something that's yet to come out. Whew, and that was this next season of Genius, which will air on Nat Geo. And we are, wow, going through the lives of MLK and Malcolm X, but showing their lives from childhood to the times in which they were assassinated, going through a parallel, going through both of their lives. It is a fascinating, fascinating series. I'm not sure when it's going to start, when it's going to air, but when it does, I'll definitely remind you of. I'm probably proudest of that. And then, yeah. I mean, I love each project that I've worked on, for different reasons. Some are just so iconic and fun. And I mean, that's, but those two stand out right now. First Kill, also on Netflix. Can't forget about First Kill. Um, Loved that project as well. Loved our showrunner, Felicia Henderson is the best. All right, last question. Oh boy. My partner is reluctant to go to therapy, but needs to desperately. I'm trying to be a good partner by listening and affirming him, but it's too much for me to handle. He shuts down every time I suggest therapy and says that therapy doesn't work. I think he may have had a bad experience with a therapist before, but I'm not sure. How can I get him to see a therapist when he won't go? Uh, if he is a grown person, as in over 18, you can't make him go. You can't make another human being go to therapy if they don't want to go to therapy. However, um, this is tough because a lot of people have resistance to starting a therapeutic process, especially if they've had a bad therapeutic process before. One thing to always remind people of, and I do too, is that therapy is not one size fits all. Um, every therapist is not your therapist, and you have the right to find one that works and fits for you. A couple of episodes back, our friend of the pod, Brandy Williams, talks about her therapeutic journey and how she saw a therapist and he just wasn't the right fit, but she also abandoned therapy time after time after time just because she didn't feel like she was getting the right fit. Um, and because culturally sometimes we don't feel like we belong with a particular therapist, or they don't understand us, or they don't understand or connect with us. And that's true of all people. You're not going to connect with everybody. One thing that I would suggest, if you can get him to at least consider exploring different therapists, it may be a great resource is Psychology Today, where they can just you can go on to click the link that says find a therapist, and you get to scroll and read different therapists' bios. You get to see their pictures, you get to see what they're specializing in, you get to see their therapeutic approach. And that tends to help you feel like you're more in control and picking out who you will be seeing rather than feeling like someone is thrust upon you. I also would, if you can, encourage, a different type of therapy. Maybe face-to-face therapy is too much. Maybe they would benefit from easing into a therapeutic relationship. So apps like Talkspace or BetterHelp are really good at finding different ways for people to seek help if they need it. If he is spiritually focused, maybe perhaps he would be interested or not opposed to seeing a pastoral counselor at church, um, rather than going a more traditional therapy route. So there are some other options. I think what you have to do, one of the things that you can do is let him know that, like, while you appreciate what he's going through and that you understand how hard it might be, and you didn't really say what it is that he's going through at this point, you can tell him that, like, if you've had experience with a therapist that helps, you can, if you want to, disclose that, like, hey, when I was feeling this way, this helped me a lot, and I think it could help you too. You can tell him, while I love listening to you and want to be here for you, I have to set a boundary because it's becoming too much for me to take on your issues or your problems. It's becoming too heavy. And I feel like you need more help than I can give you. Um, that might be a way of saying, hey, I think you need to get your ass on somebody's couch because you can't keep being on mine. There are different ways that you can say what it is that you need. Because you have to also remember that you have to take care of yourself as well. As a therapist, as someone who listens to people's problems all the time, I also have to remind myself that there is a boundary and that I can't get over invested. And it sounds weird coming from a therapist, but we also have to police our own emotions because we can be traumatized. We can be overburdened by the lives and the issues and the problems of our patients as well. It can be taxing on us too, to hear all of that and feel as though we need to do something, do something about it. But what we have to always remember as therapists and as individuals who love people, right, is that I can hold it for you. I can hold it for you, but I can't really do anything. I may not be able to do anything about it. What I can do is empower you to do something about it. And so that's what you are doing, is encouraging him to be empowered and feel as though he can do something about it. And that may be talking with someone else outside of the situation. Another thing, remind him you're biased. Like, he's talking to someone that loves him, that is biased, that's going to take his side, that, like, perhaps you need a set of fresh ears to determine the best course of action and how you move forward and how to deal with it. Remind him you're not a trained professional. Like, I love you so much, but I know nothing about anxiety. And if that's what you're struggling with, you can talk to me till you're blue in the face, but I cannot help you. Let's find someone that can actually help you deal with this stuff because it's heavy. If you're open to it, perhaps he will be open to you going with him to a first initial appointment. Maybe he'll be open to you helping, but ultimately, you ask, how can I get him to go? Grown people do what they want to do and they don't do what they don't want to do. All you can do is offer him some solutions. He may or may not decide to go. And at that point, you got to decide what you're going to do, how you're going to handle things moving forward. I would not go in the route of ultimatums. I don't like them. So he can make whatever choice he wants to make as an adult. You may have to then say, you know what? I understand your right to not wanting to go and talk about this with anybody. That's fine. I cannot take on these issues anymore. I have to cut myself off at a certain point. Otherwise, um, it's becoming unhealthy for me. So I appreciate the fact that you don't want to see a therapist, but here's what I'm going to do, what I have to do to take care of me. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Please let me know. Email me back. Let me know what's going on here. And if there is a piece of this story that I don't understand or something else. So that was 10 questions and it's been about 50 minutes. So I think we're going to wrap this episode up. I thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that if you have any questions that you will ask them for the next time we do this Ask Dr. Tiff segment of the episode. You can email your questions to intimatedetailspod@gmail.com, or you can just drop me a line. This is the easiest thing to do. Drop it in the comments on Instagram at Intimate Details Podcast. You can also drop us a note in the actual comments of the podcast. We usually do a poll at the end of every episode, or a Q&A, and there will be one at the end of this episode, encouraging you to ask a question. If you have a question that you would like to have asked on the podcast, please drop it in the show notes on Spotify, and we just may answer it on the next episode of Intimate Details with Dr. Tiff, where we ask Dr. Tiff. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I do thank you for your continued support, listening to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, everywhere you listen, getting in where you fit in, even over on YouTube. So I thank you so much. Please continue to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next week. We've got a great guest planned for next week too. Actually, the next 2 weeks. I can't wait to share those with you. But until then, we'll talk, darling. Ciao.